Welcome, welcome, welcome. Last evening, what a great evening. I spent some time with about 5 different churches across the U.S., and we talked about their journey in this work and their depth of commitment to this work. So what a great night that was last night. Thank you for that. Was a wonderful time. All right. So this is going to be a 2-part morning. And the 2-part morning is we're going to cover in rapid fire about 6 or 7 items. I think all of them, except for maybe the first one I show you, you're familiar with. But we want to just bring these to your attention because they're tools. They are aspects of this paradigm that we want to remind you of. And then the second part we're going to move into is Jeff and I have 3 particular documents that are related to the third curve that we want to introduce to you and give you the broad scope of them. And so we will simply just be sitting up here for this time, and I'll just be playing up on the screen. You'll see my computer screen, and we'll walk you through those 3 documents related to the third curve. So, because most of what we've been focused on in the last 3 days has been tools for you up the second curve. Now, these tools are used as well up the third curve, but we've been talking about them up the second curve in particular. But a place to start, if I could, we've got a book here I want to bring to your attention, a very accessible book. And as you've been seeing, I have a habit of putting a book onto a page. And so this is that book on a page. Now, the book is called From Christendom to Apostolic Mission, Pastoral Strategies for an Apostolic Age, written by a group of Catholic leaders who got together to dialogue over successive times, regularly, over a period of years, and they said, guess what? The world is changing, and Christendom is changing. And that means our strategies need to change. Have you heard this before? Now, they go in, and you can see their outline of their whole book there. They say everyone has a ruling imaginative vision in their head. That's a paradigm. You have to see the world differently and make commitments. But their second part, they call, if you work in Christendom mode versus if you work in the apostolic mode, you are operating with very different strategies. And they are calling for an intentional apostolic-like strategies is what they call for. You can read the book, very accessible, as I said, and you can read all these. They go over here and say, here's what we believe to be some strategies for the apostolic days in which we live. Isn't this amazing? How many people are suggesting these things? So I'm just going to read these. I'm not going to go in depth with them, but we just want to get these into your mind. Jeff has brought this to us. I devoured this book, and many other leaders in our setting devoured. Is that a good? Yeah, that communicates. Devoured the book, and been using it, I guess, to it. Get an apostolic attitude. If you're going to live and have strategies for apostolic days, you need to get an apostolic attitude. Boy, I'm tempted to read every single aspect, but I'm not going to. Do not be trapped by social analysis. And that's one that you get into budgets, you get into how many people are coming, into all sorts of things that they talk about. Use institutions differently. Strengthen the practices that bring the incarnate and the transcendent to help them become visible. Think of the gathering and how we talk about how the Spirit works. Boy, such a direct hit. Rethink priestly life and education. Allocate resources with apostolicity in mind. Now, I don't know how many times you use the word apostolicity in your vernacular, but maybe we can start doing that at some point. Now, this one I've begun to use almost too much as an excuse, Jeff, but it is so good. Be ready for apostolic messiness. Apathetic bodies in Christendom are easy to arrange. Not so in the apostolic days. Zealous apostolic types will take to the battle. Wow. Welcome.
Apostolic messiness is 2004 to 2014 in India. Because we had the paradigm, we got you started, we didn't have some of the resources, and so that's a good thing.
It is a good thing, and that's what's so comforting when you read the book and confidence inspiring is in the beginning of paradigms, especially in the first and second generation, it is a mess because there's whole bunches of loose ends and you don't know how to fit them in. I'm telling you, it is so helpful to read these things from all these different authors. Welcome apostolic energy, even when this means there's much risks. There's much to be gained in these days, and expect cultural influence to be exercised through impressive witness. The Spirit is alive in these days. Pray, and I added this part, pray the Ephesians 3:14-21 prayer, which we've been praying for 5 years. Yes? Since the Ephesians book, since we went through it here, praying that prayer, that we may be able to comprehend with all the saints before us and after us the height, the width, the breadth, and the depth of Christ and his love for the church.
Does he mention in the energy one?
Yeah.
Does he mention risks, or did you put that in there? I think he mentions it, doesn't he?
No, he mentions it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He
talks about
the messiness and the risk combined. That's what drives Western parachurch, Western foundations nuts. The fact that in building the paradigm, there's a messiness to it and there's risk to it. Whereas Christendom, everything is measured with exact, control all the way through. And that's where I think we hit some big clashes.
Well, think about two things, Jeff. Think about the left side of building programs, rules, policies.
Yeah.
Or think about schema, frameworks, principles, processes, practices. I mean, there's a lot more risk when you tell people to think in principles versus if you say this is the rule. There's a lot more risk. Mm-hmm. And the second thing to think about our church gatherings, how you think about a church gathering. Well, if you know the church gathering is going to be 1 hour, you know you're going to preach for 26 minutes because that's how long the TV thing lasts or the radio thing lasts. You know you're going to have 3 songs to start. You know you're going to have a prayer. You know and it's all going to be, and then we're going to get it done in this amount of time. You have control. There is very little risk in that system.
Yeah. And we've
compared to a gathering, that's pretty risky.
Yeah.
Because guess what? Somebody can come in. They can say whatever they want. That's risky. And
we want to double our number of house churches, so we took, thinking the apostolic end of things, we decided to move very strongly into the youth being peer-led to be able to reach the youth, and pull that out. And you and I have had conversations about that. It's solid in the way it's going, but if they drive the car in a ditch, back it out, and
get them back on the road
and keep going. But unless we're willing to do some of those things, then everything's safe.
Yep.
It's the same.
It's a great book. It's really helpful. I highly recommend. Not everything in there is completely, but it's really good. All right. The next thing wanted to remind you of. I'm just going to go back and forth here. So many documents. What I want to remind you of is, this is just a big idea, a big framework thing. Paradigm, where is that thing? The S-curve paper. Jeez.
The one you just gave?
Yeah. I just want to remind you and show you. There we go. We are really spending these next 10 years. We're going to be, all these curves we're operating in, and all of you are operating in all the time. But the strategic focus is the second and third curve. This stuff we've already said multiple times over that, but I just, again, before we go into some of these other particulars, just want to frame this in, because especially when we get to these three documents, they're focused really on this third curve. And again, these are big macro, huge paradigm ideas, and so we're going to get to some concrete things here in a little while. But just remember, just want to have a frame of mind, second and third curve items. Okay. What else did I want to tell you? As we are getting, we've had a lot of questions about, can we get this book? Can we get this paper? Yes. The answer is we have global dialogue papers that you can have electronically, and we have all these mastering scriptures that are electronic. We've given you some of the hard copies today. Internationally, we give you electronic versions. We have abandoned the idea that we're going to have some sort of more control over something. We have created these as tools for you to understand the paradigm and master. These are your tools. That's what I'm trying to articulate. They're your tools. So we can give them to you electronically. Stateside, we sell them through our store, so you can get them through there. If you really want ahead of time copies, then we can get you, as part of this audience, we can get you some that are, just know that they're not complete. But the main thing we wanted to just communicate there, I've gotten it probably more than a dozen times, hey, can we get this, we get that? And the answer is, we do it. James is here, and James really manages most of that for us, so he's really the guy to ask. But otherwise, when you're here, if we can get you a hard copy of something, then we can do that. The other thing, we haven't talked much about cloud tools, but I did want to reiterate to you that those are your tools. That's my calendar. Let's not show you that. These tools in the cloud are also yours. You can, all these resources that we use, we put them into pathways, and this is these things, but again, let's just make sure we cover everything for just a moment. This is a way to track and assess your network and your people and the progress. I would highly encourage all of you to use it. Again, it's something that we're not going to monetize. We freely give it to you, freely use it. I see so many, well, no, I'm not going to go there. So we can, I don't know how much more is in Bill, do you want me to say anything more, or James or Steve, anything more about the cloud? But the cloud is like the resources, it's just an additional tool that we've created, that we put energy and effort into. It's an ongoing programming thing. But this is where, from a global perspective, as you want recognition from the global center, as people make progress, you can get on your own without anybody else. You used to have to enroll. You used to have to do that through one of us. Now, once we take you through a process, this is your own tool, and you can enroll your own people. I don't have the stats in front of me, but we've enrolled, well, I can show you my dashboard right here just for a second. Here's system activity. We have Felix. You were the last one to get online. Look at that. This morning at 9:33. That means you got on just a little bit ago. Uh-oh. Maybe that wasn't as good. Sorry about that. That flipped on us really quickly. But we have 43,547 people that are in the cloud that are using this tool. There's 22,418 that have got a certificate out of 33,000. Okay, bunch of 135,000 files and competencies that have been uploaded. That's papers that have been uploaded. Last 3 programs assigned, completed programs. Okay, there's 5,300 messages.
One thing to note on that 43,547 that are actually have a program and are in that second-gen system, almost all of those have a cohort that they're leading. So that gives you the kind of the picture of the size. Majority of that's in India, but it gives you a picture of the size of the ordered growth.
So in the last 3 minutes now, Felix, you are off the leaderboard because now Anthony, Bina, and David, who are all, I think all in this room, have all gotten on in the last minute and a half. And now Ray Williams has taken over the leaderboard. So anyway, isn't that fun? This is your tool, and I'm going to get off this page as soon as possible because someone else is going to try to get up on the leaderboard. No. World map, that's fine. It's fun. I like this map, but it's what else do I want to show you here? So all the pathways that we talk about, the arranging of these resources, I'm going to show some of the pathways in just a little bit. But again, this is your tool. It's your tool to use. Just be proactive. The next thing we want to talk about, just mention, is the coaches. Use the coaches just like the books and just like the cloud tools are yours. Believe it or not, Bill is also yours. Does that communicate? Be proactive with the coaches. Use the coaches. They're there to help equip. They're there to help explain the tools, help you give access to the tools. Be proactive. As you know, we're spread across 50 countries. We're a team that's doing many different things. So you have to be proactive with us in that work. I did want to show you as well, Jeff, this is something that we've been working on for quite a long time, but
can I add one thing to the quick to the list?
Yeah.
One of the things we're going to talk about when Michael hits the we'll do it together, but when Michael hits the third curve, is that we're actually have packages that some of our guys are going to be selling per se, but one of them is our new 3.0 masters, both the certificate and the doctorate. Another is our apprenticeship academy. And as we take another run nationally, in the U.S. at this, what we didn't have before was coaches. And so we're actually going to produce an inexpensive degree, but have coaching available, because if you don't, or even the big certificate, if we don't have coaches available as you're putting together your program and your cohort, until it really gets going and stabilized, we're not highly successful. When Michael put that whole coach thing together in India, and we're gonna bundle things differently when it comes to the apprenticeship academy, which is fully developed and fits perfectly into homeschooling networks, for example. But as we move some of those things forward nationally, and as we move the 3.0 both master's certificate and degree forward, there'll be a coaching system with it. So there'll be a new pricing, and then there'll be a cost for coaches really being able, to help you into it. And I think it's scalable. I think it's really going to work, because we're going to be driving that some. And it relates to the second curve, because how do you build your programs, and first curve too, but really it also relates to third curve, and how we can build a self-enterprising.
Yep. And that fits in right into the these products that we're going to talk about on the third curve in just a moment as opportunities for some of you is I think in days past you may think, oh, it's just the build team, just the build team, but it's not just the build team that is coaches. We have other. I could show you some of the coaches here. Suman, who came from Chadwick's, is a coach around the world. Steve Gallagher is a coach. But conceptually, what we really see is as you work in your own situation, and as you develop and root your own situation, you can, based off your gifts, based off your desire, based off some other factors that are out of some of our controls, you can become very useful in the global scene. So not only in your own setting, but you can begin to be resource to others and move in and out of other situations. And so the way what we're doing here is saying there's a global team for the whole map, or the CBTE. There's civilization and city teams that can come together, that are in different situations, but can come together. We got the Build Global team, which is one you're familiar with, global benefactors on here, and a second generation or a next generation of team of leaders as well. And so I've got some of you know about that. Every other Wednesday or so, we meet together. Not everybody is second gen on that, but it's got a little bit of apostolic messiness in it. But we're talking about things that we collectively need to know about that's moving in the paradigm. And now we're actually doing some equipping with about 200 from a couple of your situations on that. Mainly from Chadwick's sphere, but many of you others over here that are part of that in your churches. But we're doing skills in the gatherings. Some of the basic skills that are fundamental skills based off Encyclical 9, how to make our symposiums and meals dynamic and effective. And so we have a seven sessions we've been going through there. But the big idea here is I got into this conversation with three of you yesterday, is Build is really just the name of Jeff and my team. That's all Build is. Build is just this, so Build can go away, maybe. I don't know if it's going to go to a third generation or not. We sure hope so, and we're trying that. But we don't actually know. But if we walk out here and get hit by a bus or a car or something, or a dog, that dog that's chasing your kids around your neighborhood, that would be more likely.
That was a brave thing to do, I want you to know.
Yeah, we should have a moment of silence for how brave you were to chase that dog from those children. What was I saying?
I don't know. I distracted both of us.
The paradigm, if Build team is not there, the paradigm remains.
You're talking about whether
the
Build itself is intergenerational, the concept of Build.
That's a different thing, right? Because Build is just a team. That's all Build is. It's just an apostolic team. Out of our network, out of our base. The only reason that Jeff and I have some strength, I mean, there's multiple reasons, gifting and stewardship, but a lot of our strength comes from our strong base of churches right here. You have to have that as well. So that's why some of your coaches are pressing you in the last few years. But what does your local church look like? Yeah. You got 100 and some networks. Okay, yeah, that's great. But what does your local church situation look like? Because if you don't have strength in this paradigm in your local situation, boy, it's going to be awfully hard to expand and multiply it out, because that's where a lot of your strength comes from, is a solid base. That's why Paul didn't sometimes go on to more open doors and went back to make sure he I want to say fill in the cracks, but he established and fixed the cracks that were there.
And we really just reinforcing that, we really believe this. For a decade, I've said in India from 2004 to 14, who am I? An apostolic leader. Who are you? You're Paul. In other words, you're inviting us into your networks. We're not building a global organization. I've said it for a decade now in China. You're inviting us into your field, into your network. If you don't like it and you think it's getting distorted some way, then throw us out. But the point is, and the power is the ability to articulate the apostolic teaching and stand strong within it and have tools, within it. So that way we can help shape Christendom, but you can't shape the next Christendom if the thing is institutionalized. It's got to be networks that are multiplying.
Yep. So it's networks, it's teams of teams, and that's why we have artwork like this that shows an aspen grove, that we're all interconnected, we're a team of teams. And that's why I get a little hypersensitive around the word build, when you use the word build too much. It's not build, it's not about build. Again, build is just the name of a team.
And most of the time we use TWCA, not really build. But we do have to have the entity.
Yeah, and then someone pointed out to me, well, why do you call it the build cloud then? I was like, oh boy, you're right. Ugh. So, there's messiness all over, but
we really believe this.
We really believe this, and we're trying to help build this. But the strength of this only comes from your local, really starts in your local situation. Just cannot overemphasize that enough. It comes from your local situation, because you can't just let's put a sign-up sheet in the back. Anybody who wants to be part of the global team, go ahead and sign up. And you also need to work in the nursery. It doesn't work that way. You gotta build it and rise up to it. Okay. The other thing before we get into the other thing I wanted to show, this was the last thing before the 3 documents. No. Was this. Gosh, so much to say about this, but again, we're going to spend the next 10 years helping build clarity. Because one thing I do know about changing paradigms, and that is sometimes what looks like resistance is a lack of clarity. Let me say that again. What looks like resistance to some paradigm things can sometimes, not always, but can be a lack of clarity. And so we really have a sense that over these next 10 years, we're laser focused on building more and more, giving you the schematic and the framework and the principles, and so that you can build the processes and practices in your situation. But these things will become clearer and clearer as time goes on. But this is a global, our map, or our global center. Now, we're not going to go into all the reasons why we feel we need a global center. Some of that's in the S-curve paper. In the second curve, you'll see one of the nodal parts that we mention in there is this. Now, you may not be that familiar with it yet, but again, over the next 10 years, you're going to become more and more familiar with it, because it's a global trust system. It's a way that, what is accreditation around the world with schools? It means that whatever you're getting, you can trust it. That's ultimately what it's about. Well, what is Paul saying? Paul's saying, I'm sending this Timothy, I'm sending this letter with him, and I'm sending him, and I am commending him. He needs to be, he should be trusted. And in this sense, this is what we're trying to do here. It's not about build, it's not about the Antioch School, it's about a global center that says these pathways are trustworthy. And so we have this scope of having master craftsman levels where all the different pathways will fit in one of these 5 pathways. And so you saw yesterday when Jeff showed that 10-year commitment, all the apostolic leaders and the elders and all these, he said, MAP MC1. You remember that on there? Well, what in the world is he talking about, and why does he use so many acronyms? Well, partly uses acronyms because I'd love to use acronyms, but maybe that's the answer. I'm not sure. Have I influenced you?
It took me a long time. Yeah, you've influenced me. Well, no, CBTE we talked about and everybody fought over, and it should be church.
It's not my fault then. Yeah. Good.
I didn't like TWCA for a long time.
And so, Master Craftsman 1 through 5, the pathways fit into that. All the pathways, and we've got 2 other charts that can show you that, but our pathways, the map pathways, and then also pathways that you create over time will fit into this as well.
We've also brought apprenticeships forward in the Apprenticeship Academy because the whole Western civilization really is moving that direction of apprenticeships. And we brought portfolios forward. It's been there since 1988, but we brought portfolios forward. And for example, the kind of the third gen guys that Michael and I work with, we've really pushed them on putting their portfolios together. Their folios, loose folios. And when they show up, if we have a kind of a later night meeting with them, and they show up and they've got their folios, but somebody forgets the folio or didn't do any work in it since last time, then we take their folio and we give them a pink one. And so they have to carry a pink one around for a month, in the churches.
Get your work done. Isaac, what are Paul's early letters? Go. Pink folio, I'm afraid. Pink folio for Isaac. Cannot name the early letters of Paul. Isaac, come on, bro.
Because regardless of the pathway, even if you're doing stuff informally or you're taking our degrees, regardless of that, you got to be serious about your own development and having ownership for your own.
Exactly.
That's the integrative piece.
That's the integrative piece, and that's why yesterday Jeff is walking around with the books trying to explain to you how you can access them, how you can get them, and you say, that's too much. But the whole point in getting is we can get there. You can get there. It takes years and years and years of discipline your mind and your body and your time. We all have 168 hours every week, but you can master Paul's body of work and build your own body of work, which is these theological essays that we introduced just a teeny bit yesterday. But in your folio and portfolio, these are some of the things that we are telling our third gen that you need to have in there. These are some things that you need to have in there and build your body of work. Okay.
You accidentally had it up there, but just for a second, go behind this to the new 3.0 masters. I just want to make a comment on that. Yeah. What you need to understand from this is we've worked on this for a long time. This is actually what we're doing in China, but now it's really becoming the engine of our whole 3.4. But really, if you work through the first principles, the story, teaching, mastering the scriptures, as we just did, the core of this Pauline corpus, the paradigm projects, which is one project on each of those, the paradigm encyclicals, and your folio, and then apprenticeship, you've got that's the masters, that's the engine. I wanted to put it up there because sometimes when we do the training and the page comes out of the handbook and you got 1.0 in front of it, this is what you're doing here is exactly what you need to do, whether you do it as a master's certificate or whether you just do it and put your stuff in a folio or whether you do it for a degree. And now we've got it so you can up-level from the degree. Last night, Renton was just doing a 2-hour Zoom with very, very strategic, large church, house church movement in China. And they've got 35 guys, and they're debating whether to start with the certificate and up-level it, but it's going to be the core of the younger guys and in that particular movement. So this is doable, and you can see that we don't have the leadership series in there. You can still finish with the leadership series if you're in that process with those core, especially those core 4 build courses. But I'm really excited about this because everything, and that's again why I was saying yesterday that some people look at this and say, oh, we've gone from the big leadership courses to the small. But the reality is you might be doing, with 3 booklets, you might be doing 275 pages of work in the pastorals, and then you got complete access rather than a reader that, you know, we give you. So, but this now, electronically or by printing them or whatever, there's every single thing on here is going to get you to the goal of having really established leaders that are capable in that second curve of going from the first 5 years to the second 5 years. I don't know why I was thinking that, but it's important to see you can create all kinds of pathways, but those pathways can lead into the pieces that can turn it into a complete picture. Any of the pathways can be up-leveled into a piece of this. That's what, and same thing with the Apprenticeship Academy. Because the Apprenticeship Academy, 1/3 of the Apprenticeship Academy is 40 credits of apprenticeship, and you can start it in homeschooling networks as well earlier. So there's, what's that? Oh,
This
that's
is
cool.
this
Yeah.
is other pathways. I'm just showing you other examples of pathways. These columns here are a pathway, and they, as you up level, then they can the combination of all these come up to other pathways. So accumulation pathways, you might call them. So you take bites of the elephant at a time, one bite at a time, one bite at a time.
And
So-
we've done a lot of work in the new emerging global universities as well. And they take informal, non-formal, and formal credentialing and put them into the badges and up-level them. And so we have what's called the Holy Grail, and that is we can do degreed apprenticeships even. You know, so I guess we're getting into too much detail, but
Well, yeah, but it all
it's important to see the
Fits.
pieces fit. Yeah.
exactly. That's all we're trying to do here. So we want to go in now and show you these 3 documents that relate to the third curve. But let me push pause. I just showed you 6 things. Any comments or questions? Yeah.
Hey, wait a minute, Don, get the mic, will you? Because I'm deaf.
You have MAP up there. I'm sensing you're using that in 2 different ways. One is the motivated abilities pattern, but that's a different thing, right? What does that stand for?
Yeah, so if you go back to this one,
You've got it in the upper right as
Master Craftsman Apprenticeships and Portfolio is how that's being
Explain
used there.
how
well.
you,
Apprenticeship portfolio. Is that
Apprenticeship is the A,
in the,
and the
okay.
P is portfolios. The reason for that
MAP, oh, I see, going down the page. Okay, I get it.
I'm sorry. Going right here, the M, the A for apprentice, and P for portfolio. Yep, that's a good question because we
explain how you put that together, because Michael created the map, so everything can go under it, specific programs and so on, but the original map and then moving it forward.
So Jeff always likes to say,
Now this
see.
might come out, this might not be right, what he's about. I can suspect.
I'm not going to get it right, but I'm just going to say it this way anyway. Jeff has a strong high school education. He always likes he says that on every now occasion. But what
Finishing in the upper, just barely in the upper half.
the bottom of the upper half. But that's funny. That's really funny. Nobody's laughing at my joke. The bottom of the upper half. Bottom of the upper half. But Jeff went through a MAP program called, it stood
Ministry Apprenticeship Program.
Ministry Apprenticeship Program. So it was basically around getting in ministry in the early 70s.
1972, and we created it.
Yeah, and created it, and actually there is a certificate that shows when you were
It's
done.
not a certificate.
It is a certificate.
No, it's not a certificate. I have no certificates and no degrees. It's a license to be able to marry and bury on the other side of the ministry apprenticeship training.
Certificate. So, we like to banter about that if you couldn't tell. A few years ago, let's say 5 years ago, we've really been intentional about that. We've got to understand our past in order to discern the present and discern the future. Been very intentional about that. We've got to understand our past. And so really coming back to apprenticeships, focusing on that, and even coming back to the name. Now, I'm changing the word map to mean a little bit something different with master craftsman versus ministry, but apprenticeships is the same, and it's not a program as per se, it's a portfolio. So that's really, the reason is, in simplistic form, without going through the 5 paragraphs of reasons, is to tie us back to our roots. To get us back to our roots, Don, get us back. Great question. Well, most people know that. No, probably not. But for kind of you, the inner core, that's why. It ties us back to the very beginning. I think that's really critical as a second-generation leader, and I think it's going to be even more critical to third-generation leader that we continue to be apostolic and continue to tie to roots.
He and I were doing a whiteboard session, and then he came in 2-3 days in a row. He came in with this map that integrates everything, and just right away, it solves the problem all the way back to 1988 in my NACAMP article where we started with, portfolios, because it isn't better. It doesn't mean you're a better leader if you have a degree or even if you have a certificate in this whole thing. If you've got a portfolio and you're developing through that process and accomplish those things. And so what this does to me is it integrates that you can be anywhere in the development process, informally, non-formally, formally with us, and be building through these things. And so it's not like the really serious ones are doing a degree, and the second serious ones are doing the whole certificate, and others are dinking around with pieces. No, it's there's reasons for the degree. It brings a lot to the table in different things. But the point is, this just master craftsman, apprenticeship, portfolios. That's why I was showing you first principles to master craftsman in terms of this and how that, when you've mastered this in real life, then you're like Timothy when Paul said you're a master craftsman, at this stage. So it gets us back to, because we were kind of letting the Antioch school, the tail wag the dog a bit, because the Antioch school will pull you over to the rules column, and we feel like we got a good balance in that now, but all the way down, and so I mean you can...
This gives everybody the chance. I know this week has been really tough in different ways around our parousia, but also around kind of the top shelf of hermeneutics. I know we're fully aware of that, and that's right now. But this is and that's intentional, because we're trying to pull you up. And it may take 5-10 more years to really capture all of that, but that's okay. We've been wrestling with it intentionally these last 10 years, and just pulled you into bits and pieces until this week. We kind of just gave you the whole thing. So, and then gave you a resource, because we feel like we're at a stage now we can hand you something that can become yours. But this is for everybody. What we did this week is not necessarily for everybody, but what we did here is for everybody. This at all believers, all the way to top leaders but everybody needs to become master craftsmen. Everybody. Even the basic believer needs to become a master craftsman. So that's what this is for, is to kind of not overweigh the balance towards the degrees or towards the upper end. Felix, you had a question? No? You were just waving at me for fun? Okay. Hello, Felix.
In last year's white paper goes into the detail of sections. How the resources developed it at different levels.
I still can't say your name. I want to say Antonio, but that's not right. I want to say
Arturo. Yeah.
How in the world am I supposed to remember that? Arturo. Got it.
Okay. So I hope I'm not opening a can of worms with this question.
Oh, great.
But you have right next to the MAP program,
Yep.
the partner created programs.
Oh, yeah.
So what is that exactly and how you go about that? Does it have to do with what Jeff was describing yesterday about like creating civilization type corpuses of information documents, work, essays, theology? Does it have to do with kind of spin-off versions of what you're doing here, or what exactly is that?
Boy, that is a can of worms question. The idea of partner-created programs is that partner create programs. Now that's a terrible answer. What I mean is we do have in mind, now we need to walk a little bit here before we run with this. So we kind of need to, but the idea is that there's lots of other tools that can be used as part of the whole MAP system and be part of the center trust stamp around the world. That's what we envision. In other words, we work with people who use a bunch of the alpha stuff, or people that use the TTI stuff, or people that use this or that, the other. Now I'm saying we want to walk here before we run. So it is a can of worms in a sense as we're not ready collectively, not from an organizational sense, but from a paradigm sense. I don't think we're quite ready to take an onslaught of everybody creating their own partner programs. We need to master the baseline first. But that is on there because that is within view. And we've done a handful of those so far, not a lot yet. We've had a lot of conversations about it, but that's why that's on there.
There's a couple other dimensions to that, I think. If you look at the Nehemiah one that you put up there, we built the program. They've sent 22,000, through that training, and one of our partners in India. And that's just, that's a modified masters of ministry. And, but they named it Nehemiah program, so they've got a way of naming their program. And so if we build a partnership with one of those groups and we say that we'll give you this much credit online to come in to our program, which we've done with Alpha, which we've done with TTI, so on, because their trainings, we can fit it into our situation. They can name things. In other words, it's not if they're creating a resource center, redoing a seminary into a resource center and serving their network of churches, they can put their own name, on it. But where the problem comes in is that if they say, we don't need mastering the scriptures and we got some other thing and we want your recognition that goes with it, it isn't going to happen because those other things won't get you there. So the on-ramp idea or the naming of things that in your own situation, because you don't have a Build India, for example. We started to build Portugal and we wouldn't let them use the name because it distorts the whole thing. So part of that, by creating, I think the reason why when you did this piece, Michael, you put the two in there is we have the Shepherding Development Program for senior elders and their wives that's highly developed and fits into the whole system. But Nehemiah Builders is a craftsman of the faith, and they took and brought our stuff into their program, reinvented it, and there's no reason why they couldn't have. And then we help assess if they want a degree. We have to be in control of what can be up leveled and can't, within it. So it's actually, we don't have a lot because now what we're trying to do is say, look, you get your apprenticeship academy and your bachelor's, if that be the case, and you get this streamlined master's, and you're going to get there a lot faster than messing around, putting all kinds of other things in there. But we will allow the on-ramp. For example, in China, there's massive alpha programs, and when they're done, they're done. So they can already that's unfolding in China in a way that Renton has worked out how they can on-ramp all those, because he and a couple other leaders were actually very key in the whole alpha for the China, Southeast Asia. So a number of ways we can fit that together.
Yep. Good question. Who else? Anything else? Concerning any of the 6 overview items I went through? Luke? No? Chadwick? Yes.
The apprenticeship program that you showed just now, is it somewhere on the cloud, or is it just fresh out of the China situation?
What program?
The apprenticeships, the apprentice.
The masters, the map masters.
Oh, the map masters. This thing.
Yeah. Is this available somewhere that we can download, or?
It's getting close.
Okay.
In other words, because they're doing a cohort, we worked with Steve and worked with his credits all the way through, and then Josh is designing it without a lot of change so that that section of Mastering the Scriptures, is in there. So accreditation, we're soaring through our third accreditation, but our accreditation absorbs some things, but it's real close to being able to be used in that fashion.
Really part of the hang up, it's not in the cloud yet, because that takes a little time, because people that do the cloud are running the microphones today, so all week, pretty busy. But from I'm going to speak for Jeff now and for myself. I'm going to pull Jeff in with me into this whole. But some of this stuff you can start ahead, because everything on here and it's a little apostolic messiness in it. But you can start, because there's program we can assign you pathways that have 75% of all this stuff already in it. It's not a nice tight package in the cloud right now, but we can get you into most of this already.
And even you can up-level old stuff. People don't have to go back through it once they join the program, because we're measuring competencies. And if you remember, Chadwick, we talked about 10 years ago on ACT in, isn't it ACT?
ATA is what you want.
ATA, yeah. ATA for Asia Theological Association, which is a crediting association under AEA and all its regionals. That's the Asia one anyway. But we talked at that time that when the Mastering the Scriptures are ready, that's going to be scalable and potentially recognizable. And even though we have it under a degree, you can also take this and begin that conversation again, of saying, if that regional accreditation is important, and you've got confidence that this is doable all the way through. And we've simplified it so there's not 1,000 check marks. The final check mark in all these things is what's measured.
Session 6 is the requirements now. So, okay, one other item. I want to briefly talk and mention about celebrations. Yeah, celebrations. And what do I mean by celebrations? I think most of you know what I'm talking about, but not everybody maybe. Celebrations, we started this, I think, 2 years ago, that in every civilization, is the vision, we'd have annually a celebration. And because as this thing grows, very few people are going to be able to get to here. And so the idea of a celebration is, in a civilization, gives people an opportunity to come and celebrate progress, to know they're part of a global thing, to encourage one another, but also a third reason is to use it almost as a way to get traction with new people. So Uganda just did one, Joseph, and his son coordinated the whole thing, and I loved Joshua's explanation to me, because he knows us well. He started by saying, I said, how did it go? Because it happened 2 weeks ago. Steve was there with them, and Steve just flew back 24 hours before this started, and then started here. So you talk about burning the candles at both ends, a candle at both ends. Working hard. But Joshua said, hey, Michael, we did have gowns. I said, oh my goodness. Gowns? Why'd you have a gowns? He said, but wait, The only reason we did gowns was because we had government officials coming and we need to fit some of the cultural things. But everything else was familial. Everything else was family. We had a huge meal, we had round tables, we had discussion, so these are family times. We want them to be a family, we want them to be around food, and for those three purposes that we just said. And
the celebrations of India have been growing and amazing.
Yeah, have been wonderful. So I just wanted to highlight, in this coming year, hopefully there'll be another one in the East African communities. That's the plan, another one. You said these 23 that made it are going to lead into these 60 that are going to hopefully make it, which will lead to the 163 original ones across those 45,000. But what else? Latin America has had one the last 2 years in August time frame. So there's going to be one in Latin America this year, pretty sure. Next year, not this year. Oh, no, not this year, next year, okay. And then who else is, we've got three places planned in India. George is going to host one. These are hosted by you, by your base, by a base church, by a base network of churches somewhere. That's the idea. You host it, you fund it, your people do it, your networks of churches do it. It's you make it look like the banquet feast we're going to have tonight. So George's network is going to host the next. Chadwick has done the last two in Chennai. We're going to shift it to for 1 year, this year in Bangalore, and the next one is going to be Satya is going to host it in Pune with Luke and Timothy, and maybe Brian's going to host one in North India in Chandigarh, which is that about an hour north of Delhi, or where is Chandigarh, right? 3 to 5 hours? 3.5 hours, okay. What? Half-hour flight, but 3.5 by car, okay.
You know, part of the strategy too.
Europe, I was going to mention Europe. I didn't. Europe, Mario is going to host that one in Europe, in Amui, and you're super excited about that. Wish I could have that wine and food you were talking about yesterday. Is that everybody? Jean-Claude hosted the one in Paris last year for Europe. Am I missing anything? Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Part of the strategy too, which will unfold on this, is a two-part thing. And one was these celebrations, you know, and getting that going. But another part of the, because Michael develops the master strategy for carrying these things out. The other part is we coordinate our schedules so that in those that we can be in the same place sometimes, not prioritizing the celebration for our involvement, but where he and I can be in the same place, even if it's every other year, and tied close to them, where we can work with top leaders in developing their strategy. So we've got our master strategy and grand strategy, and then work with you in the master strategy, bring them together. So with a combination of the celebrations and that master strategy element, you get the elements of what we do in our international conference each year. And so the international conference kind of is multiplying in a way, and it'll be more global ones that'll be focused around this time. It won't close the door to people coming in for the experience, but otherwise it would, you know, we would just keep going, and we'd have to have one. I mean, I don't know what you had, 3,000 at the last one, I think, in India or something like that.
Maybe not that many, but yeah, we had 1,000 at that Master Craftsman one in March of 2023. Okay, anything else? Do we need to take a break before we do the 3 docs? There was a piece of me that wanted to just power through and get done at 11 and be done at 11 today, but let's do a vote. Who wants to power through the 3 doc? No. Okay. And who wants to power through and not take a break and just go to the 3 documents right now? Who wants to take a break and then come to the 3 documents? Nobody wants to take a break. What's that? Power through and give a break. for the afternoon. All right. Well, let's do that then.
I remember we did that for one time about 2 decades ago when we were off around the table in what's now the lounge, and we had a number of top leaders there, and they were so annoyed they didn't get their break that the French, together with Jean-Claude, and I think it was Moussa, with the Nigerians, when it was time for the break, and I'm talking, they just get up, start walking around, talking, you remember that? To try to train us to not just keep going. Didn't it?
All right. We have 3 documents to introduce to you, and they are framework pieces for third curve activity. The 3 documents are related to benefactor development system, it's related to entrepreneurial products up the third curve, and it's also about collections and Philippian churches, not flippin' churches. That was one of the comments last night. Philippian churches. And so you can see those up the third curve. So we're just going to walk these, all 3 of these documents are just single pages, framework, conceptual, that we want to talk to you about. So, Jeff, do you have a preference on which one we start with?
Well, let's do the benefactor. Let's do that one page that I'm going to do first, because it has those on it, but we don't need to spend hardly any time on it. You just need to see this is where we're going.
Okay.
But the other 2 sheets that Michael will introduce are, we really need time on.
Okay. So here's the market, the benefactor.
Now, all these things have been in development for a significant period of time. The whole concept of the third curve. But the things we're looking at, how do you take somebody who's a potential benefactor? See, every one of our networks, even if they're very small networks, you got to build an apostolic team that has Timothy and Titus types, women co-workers, and benefactors, because you don't have sustainability long-term without being benefactors. And part of that curve, you remember from funding spontaneous expansion and the taxonomy, part of it is Philippian churches that participate like Philippi, part of them is benefactors, part of them is co-workers, and is entrepreneuring teams, and part of them is the collection. So Michael's going to talk about the collection. He's going to talk about the opportunities for entrepreneuring, and those are 2 sheets, and the Philippian churches. But we need a long-term strategy developing that curve, which we've been building long-term, but now it's coming together on developing benefactors, the kind of benefactors that are well-trained, but also, like Phoebe, are brought in and can do strategic things, within it. And so, and also we've got the experience through the years of working with McCollum and generous giving and bottom of pyramid investing and all that kind of stuff, that is developing. And at any rate, so putting the picture together, the first thing we want to do is marketplace leaders, executive education. And then we believe that can replicate. And we've done 2 or 3 versions of it, but the idea is an intense 2-3 day period, like executive education in the U.S. We bring potential benefactors together and paint a picture of what's going on in the world, what the shift of Christianity, and get the benefactor idea out in their head. And then they need opportunities for development. One of the things that was discovered with the National Christian Foundation group, with all these donor-advised funds, they're willing to create a small foundation with a donor-advised fund, but they also want personal development, and they also want to be able to invest in a way that they don't have to keep giving forever. So we need a development path for us as well, but you developing that 1/3 of the apostolic team that are going to be benefactors. And that engine has to be, the whole taxonomy from that encyclical has to be in place in your network. But this one is the benefactor path.
And implementation-wise, Jeff and I are planning to prototype this would be 10 months from now, 9 months from now, in the large Asian countries. So that's we hope to begin to prototype I've got a whole couple pages on what it's going to look like. Jeff said, where is the world going? There's a whole Jeff is as just like that with stuff about the whole world and its politics and its economies and its systems. And of course, then where is Christendom going? So where's the world going? Where is Christendom going? We got our hands around that piece. And then how do they engage in Christ's grand strategy? That's the big question. How do you plug their multifaceted gifts, their network and their acumen around building businesses? How do you actually plug them in a high capacity way? You got to plug them into apostolic teams.
And then the idea,
which, by the way, that connects to what we were talking about yesterday. That means you all have to have apostolic teams for them to plug into. But we're going to begin to prototype that this year.
and the idea is you can insert this, in that thing yesterday, of the phase 1, phase 2, the bottom was marketplace benefactors map, 1 and 2. In other words, these things have to be replicable and scalable so you can each bring them into your network.
We'll prototype it now, but then we hope to take the elephant and put it in other pieces so it can be turnkey for you as we move forward up the curve.
And so the marketplace executive education, on the other side of that opens the door to them. And they can do marketplace modules and certificates. Some of the attractive ones to businessmen and women particularly are Life to the End and SEMA, and being able to use those in their businesses as well. Then the option of having marketplace certificates or degrees, we don't know if that's really going to move, or not, because people that are benefactors are already successful, in a way, but yet we've had a lot of requests for that, particularly in the Hong Kong area.
For young, the 30s-year-old people, 20-year-old people on that one.
And then the apprenticeship academy.
And this one, by the way, we tried, and we started a prototype of that, but the problem I can tell you we prototyped it for 2.5 years, and I can tell you what the core problem was, but core 3 problems, but let's not do that.
Then,
I like to solve problems and then turnkey it so we can do it more, but.
As far as the apprenticeship academy, were you still going?
No, I guess I've had 2 false starts, so no, I'm not going to. Go ahead.
Okay, the apprenticeship academy actually is important on that path, because the idea is that everyone is to be engaged in good occupations, and help meeting pressing needs. So getting the next generation really on the right track as far as their own growth and development and their own engagement in good occupations. And so the Apprenticeship Academy gets you a young generation established in your faith, and it's the next generation also of benefactors that will come. And then the way we envision the system, way back with, some of you know Bob Goris, who died, but was really key with us in helping prototype some of the original things related to benefactors. And he was part of a group in the U.S. where they had, Sullivan was one of the organizations, and they had an executive front end. They had opportunities for continued development, but they also had roundtables. And so once you had gotten the basic foundation, annually you could be part of a small roundtable. And they were expensive to be part of, but you would have maybe 8 other businessmen and women. It would be a small group for one day, intense, all at similar levels within their levels of business that they're in, or that sort of thing. So those roundtables can multiply, so you can keep the benefactors who you're building, who might do the executive ed, and maybe a couple things here and there of certificates to learn the tools, but then also an annual kind of thing that then around those roundtables we would offer also seminars, consulting, podcasts, blogs that would allow ways of continuing to develop. And we would give you tools. Michael's developing a whole team with real skills in the podcasts. And also we remember Seek the Welfare of the City. We started the whole idea of blogs and We can be really creative at that point, but there's got to be a framework for all of this. So that third curve, it's not new stuff, but now it's time to get that integrated.
Yep. And think back to the team of team ideas. We need more of you helping push this stuff up the curve with us. On the podcast, I had told you earlier, some of you have followed that in here, but we do have one, and one of the things I'm going to be doing, it's not a direct hit to what we're talking about here, but all these, like I showed you Jude, I showed you the book of Jude here, or maybe I showed you Hebrews the other day. I showed you that book. Where's Jude? Here's the book of Jude. On that, I'm going to be all of these books. I will be using the podcast to go through all these books in this form. So it'll be a spot of resources for you. Okay, the next thing. Let's do entrepreneurial products last. This is the second item is Philippian churches and collections. The big idea here is engaging your local church in Christ's global kingdom work, in TWCA work, and the apostolic teams in particular. The big idea here is that we need to begin, rather than pulling money from the West, we need to begin to pull money and engage your local churches in this global work, starting with collections, and then hopefully over time, as becoming more and more equipped, become Philippian churches. And by Philippian churches, we mean churches that really understand in their minds that they're part of something big, something bigger, something global. And it takes time for that. It takes time for that to happen, and so the onus of that is really on you to really develop that and build that state of mind in people, because otherwise it can just seem like you're taking up a collection, that's just got maybe a good sales pitch behind it or something, but that's not what so it takes time to develop that, but the initial collection is you and your churches who have really benefited from this work and from this paradigm. So pragmatically, we're going to, what do I want to say? The purpose, I just told you who the audience is. It's all of you and your networks of churches. We'd really like to get down to individual churches. Now, I know we're not at the point of getting down to those 45,000 yet, but we do want to get down all the way down to individual churches. So the equipping process would look like this. We need to equip you with some of these principles around how the money stirred in and how to really participate in the global team. So we're going to use some of the framework stuff from Paul's letters, especially around the Corinthian letters, where he's solving some of these problems, and he's taking up a collection for Jerusalem and for his work. And he says, part of your maturation as a church in Christ is if you participate in this greater work. So we've got to equip you in that so you can turn around and equip your churches, your leaders in that, because it's very different than just being part of a mission program, as we know it in the left column of Western Christendom. So we've got to equip you on that. We're going to take the time. We've got some working workshops. I don't know if we announced this much in our coaching yet, but so this might be the first time you hear it, but in July 15 through July 23rd, we're going to make available online, and we're going to invite everybody in the globe to it. All of your leaders can come, but we're going to have working times online for those days. It'll probably be a 3-4 hour period every day for just to get online with coaches from your side. We're going to ask many of you to be coaches in it during that period, to help your civilization, to help leaders, to make progress, to just make progress. Help each other make progress. Working workshops. And they'll be held at different times to accommodate, and Bill and Steve can stay up and do the 2 a.m. to 5 a.m. sessions. That's perfect. So there'll be different times a day that they'll be held. But Jeff and I will start them, and we're going to start them by equipping everybody with the principles of this global collection and moving into Philippian churches. And then we'll end it with some more equipping as well. We have a second time, which is November 4th to November 12th. This is strategically placed right before 2 weeks or 3 weeks before the Indian celebrations to help make progress. Again, this is about how many day period is this? I don't know, 7-8 day period where we'll get together 3, 4, 5 hours every day and make intentional progress in pathways so that we can celebrate it. But Jeff and I will also use that time to talk about equipping you in the principles of the collection. Each network will work with us, the apostolic leaders, or the Build Coach, to set dates for taking collection in 2025. And emerging Philippian churches, benefactors like Phoebe. As more of this is accomplished, leaders in the churches will have principal benefits emerge, and that is hopefully your churches over time will become Philippian churches as they understand that part of their maturity is being part of the global expansion of the gospel. And benefactors could come and rise up out of understanding this collection and the global aspects to it, that they can become really benefactors to not only the global work, but also to you and your apostolic team. I'm creating a pathway for this, so it'll probably be a multi-year pathway because Jeff and I will just do it at different spots, but I'll make the pathway ahead of time. That way you know what's in the pathway. These are some of the assignments, if you will, or leaders of how we're, Randy Beckett in the Western, Chadwick and Thinagrin for the help us coordinating India, Steve's coordinating Africa, Jeff and I will take care of China and the Muslim territories, Steve and Jean-Claude Europe, and James will help Latin. So this is what a timeline of it might look like. We'll equip you here. You begin to talk about it, and you begin to take a collection sometime end of this year or end of summer this year. More to come on this.
Can you envision for them a little bit those 7-8 days, 3-4 hours? What would be? See, in a way, that will be fluid a bit and a bit messy, but it's all contributing to that third curve and helping not only the collection, but helping to equip you and any others that you bring into that, you know, with the view of developing and prototyping the tools and resources that you would use to create your own third curve. Is that a good summary? Or
yeah, are you asking though about what those working workshops might look like?
Yeah.
Okay. Let me answer that one just like I answered Jeff's text message about what video he needs to do for. I'll answer it second. I wanted to tell a quick story because what this came back to my mind was actually from one of Babu Rao's network leaders. In March of 2023, he came. It was out of his network. We were in Delhi, and he came up, and his whole family had come with him. So beautiful, absolutely beautiful, Babu, absolutely beautiful. This leader came up, and grandmother was there, mother was there, wife was there, children were there, and they were clearly from slum area, but he had a really nice coat on, really nice coat. And the grandmother said to me, they had saved for over a year to buy that coat. Saved for over a year to buy that coat. And then they handed, and then the mother, was it the mother? No, it was the daughter then. It was like a 2-minute little ceremony. Handed me a handful of rupees. And said, we want this because we've had an opportunity to participate in this. We want this to go around the world. That's power. It was powerful 2 minutes. Very powerful. And so, in a sense, this is the heart of what we have to equip you more in that, and especially around how Paul's framework of that. But that's ultimately what we're after here, is every single one of those participating in this. Now, Jeff's question was, what do these global working workshops look like? We will have workshops that say this is this resource. We're going to be talking about making progress in First Principles Series 1. And people can sign up for that. Leaders can, and then depending on your civilization, you'll have someone from that civilization will help lead that. And so there'll just be a plethora of choices that leaders can pick from, and that we'll coordinate, build coaches. We'll work with you and your civilization to figure out who can lead which pathways and what pathways need to be available. But it's a way for all of us to make progress all together. In the front end and the back end, Jeff and I will address everybody and equip everybody with some of these collection and Philippian church principles from Paul's topos. That's what it will look like.
And see, again, the reason why this third curve is so important, and it's so difficult because the Western way that fund development is done, the way sustainability is built into your networks, creates a kind of dependency that keeps our benefactors that are already there, and the assumption is money that is needed is already there. It's in key churches and it's in benefactors, but they're not developed, and so there's a Western system that gives money to the global South. That's why you guys have been following the news. That's why USAID has basically been shut down, because if you go all the way back to my paradigm paper on funding spontaneous expansion, the Western Relief Development Organizations deteriorate a country. And we've seen that in Africa, that took place. So what we're saying is that we have to get really serious in this emerging Christendom about a whole new way of thinking. We can't depend on governments, and we can't depend on wealthy Western parachurch organizations and NGOs and relief development organizations and foundations, because it's a different world. But that means we have to pioneer. You have to pioneer it in your network. And so we have to take it very seriously, because Paul, think about it, 1 Corinthians 16, 1-4, all of 2 Corinthians 8 and 9, and many other pieces just devoted to understanding that paradigm. We've got several pages that, because the Chinese collected money and gave significant resource during COVID to our partners in India. But it was very difficult for the Western situations to come in and grab it and pour it through their way of doing things. And so the third curve is very, very important in not only our opportunity to continue to work globally, but within your own networks, key networks. And we're going to see some networks that are poor in parts of the world, like what happened in that collection of the Gentile churches for the Jewish churches in famine. All kinds of paradigm things come out of it, but we can't get anywhere unless we look at that encyclical and how the money flowed, through Philippian churches, through key benefactors, through self-entrepreneuring apostolic teams, and special collections, as things are developing and as the networks are solidifying.
Yep. So this is a special collection turning into, hopefully, over time, maybe we got to do this multiple years in a row, but over time turn into Philippian churches. Can you see it? We had a celebration in Mumbai this year, and there was 3 or 4 women who worked the streets, but had done life in the church. And also, can you see it 10 years from now? All these small, simple churches, all strewn across, that are participating, and they know in their heart and their mind that they're participating. I think it's just so beautiful. Okay, last document, speaking of self-entrepreneuring, we need to create products and platforms for leaders to be self-enterprising. Pretty pretty known that we've known this, right? To feed and expose more people to the paradigm, increasing the amount of church planners and marketplace leaders exposed to it, sustaining the work of apostolic leaders and their teams. So there is so many products you could pursue and we can pursue, but here is 4 of them that we've listed, and beginning to really just, what do I want to say? Beginning to consider, because some of these are just, I think, ready to go. Like this one right here, it really, there's a few more things we can put on it, but it's really low-hanging fruit. And that is, as a coach, you can provide in certificates, degrees, you can use that to an audience. We used to go through every single church and go through a certified leader. What this is, when we say 2.75 and 3.0, what we mean is it's some of the pathways that you've just seen, the same pathway, but you can become the coach. You become the coach for it. And so that means some of the income then that would come from this would come to the coach. And so if you had a cohort of 10 people, you had your own cohort of 15 people or something, then what I've got a little matrix built about, it depends on the civilization, but how then that can be a product, if you will, that you can self-entrepreneur with. Some of the churches that are here in the West right now, the reason they're here is because they came in through the Antioch school. And then they realized it was a lot more than just a Bible college or a home school seminary. They realized, oh my goodness, this is a worldwide thing that I want to be part of. And so that's what we would hope that this would do, is you provide an opportunity for people that maybe want this. I was one of those. You know my story, but I wanted to be more of a leader in the church, and in the very beginning when I was 23, I just assumed that meant I had to go to DTS. I had to go to seminary somewhere. And so I started looking until the leaders of the church said, man, if you leave, you're going to leave your job, you're going to leave this church, we don't know what you're going to learn, it's going to be expensive, and you'll probably never come back. And they were right on all those, but I thought they were wrong on all 5 of them. There seems to be a tendency here for me not to be a little stubborn in the beginning. And you know the rest of the story is they found Build a few months later and started using the resources, and my life has never been the same. We have to provide that opportunity for more people. There's ways we need to be careful here, I think, but I think this is one that we could. Those of you that wanted to be aggressive and like this idea, we could start this with you in 2 weeks. Give us a week to get things in order after the conference here, and then we could begin this one. This one is Antioch School, Equip, the pathway. It's all there already. It's just some of these other portions you'd have to figure out, but pretty easy. Apprenticeship Academy. We've got, that's really after for homeschool, high school, partnerships with Marketplace. This is basically like the Antioch School, but the Apprenticeship Academy, helping people figure out their life work before they leave high school, before they would, it's a way to understand what your life work is. We have brochures on this, we have outlines of this. All over the place, but this is basically, if you're motivated around that, this is a lot like the certificate and the degree system we have. It's just more geared towards apprenticeships. We have tried this one in the large Asian country we keep talking about. The problem with it was it was targeting not the marketplace, it was targeting churches, and so it ultimately didn't work. But in the marketplace, this is something that's still a need. And in different pockets, this is still very much a need. And the tools are there. This one's not quite as far developed as far as the pathways are concerned, like like the school and the apprenticeship academy are. But this one is with someone that's entrepreneurial. This is one where very much can be spun up and used pretty quickly.
Yeah, and let's be clear on this one too. When he says we prototyped it a couple places, and in other words, we worked a couple situations where the apostolic team themselves could actually start a business, but they can't take that business to the churches because we're offering the churches free, like everything else, to be able to really use it as a tool to develop them. But a lot of times there are businessmen and women that would turn around and say, wow, that would really help me in business. So the whole idea of Life to the End, SEMA, has been used very large scale in help, the Cadillac tool, really, in helping you think through the right people and, in the right places in business. In other words, and then the coaching kind of things. We've got the tools that we can, you can actually build this engine to fit your own situation.
So I did this when I was in the business world. I offered this to the business I was in, and then out of this, then it spun out, and I started doing First Principles with about a third of the men and women that were in it. And out of that, a handful of them now are in this church network and are leading churches with us. That was 18 years ago. So it's you start with life development. Everyone needs to know their life purpose, Christian or not. Everyone needs to know their life purpose. And there's ways to put on seminars to kind of market it and get whet people's appetite, pull people in, and then there's kind of a 3-phase to this one. And the last one we put up here was Mastering the Scripture seminars. And Mastering the Scriptures, and this can be done online, this can be done in person. These are different ways to do this, but the general concept here is nowhere on planet Earth is there something like, now I can say this, but like Mastering the Scriptures. And so I think it's really important to begin to showcase it. And so that's what this idea is about, to promote and provide understanding to the MTS churches and church leaders that are looking for some of these answers, and build coaches, and any of you partners can deliver this. So again, these are entrepreneurial platforms that we can work with you on, and I think MTS over these next 10 years is something that we need to begin to expose out there on planet Earth. In particular, I think it's a unique product, if you will, from a market standpoint that's just not out there. And if we can start flying our flag around it, I think it'll really benefit you as leaders, but benefit the whole movement and understanding as well. So those are the four.
And becomes an on-ramp into the bigger, well, you already said it, but it becomes an on-ramp like what you used in the business situation. But here, we can also envision a seminar, because we'll be selling MTS in the U.S. And so we can do seminars, and if a church wants to bring you in, or if you find churches that would bring you in, and maybe a Friday night, Saturday seminar, and actually charging for the seminar, and this becomes an entrance into the piece and a tool to open the door to the whole process.
So if some of you are saying, wow, one of these pieces sound great, but the fact is I'm already strapped for time, and B, I'm not an entrepreneur. I'm not an entrepreneur at all. The goal is we have churches that have gifts inside those churches that are entrepreneurial. And I love entrepreneuring myself. And so with the combination of a handful of our other churches and myself and others, we're going to begin to build these pieces and help help you. If you're interested in one of these, or even just an aspect of one of these, then begin to talk to us, and begin to talk to your build coach, begin to talk to me, because we want to begin to, in earnest, we've talked about these for years, but again, we're in a new era. We're in a new era, so we're going to begin to spin iteratively up this third curve all together. Okay? So, let's take some questions, and then we'll be done. We just went through the 3 documents. I'll put them all 3 up. Comments or questions to these visions? Up the third curve we go. Yes, we can get you these sheets, absolutely. Yep. In fact, Isaac, can you get Nancy to start printing these 3 sheets? I didn't hear you. Nancy knows. The 3 sheets. When will this be implemented?
Yes, for the master
As soon as you do
entrepreneurs.
it. No, which one? Which one do you mean?
The first slide on the left. Yes, that one.
This one?
Yes.
When
This
will-
year or next year? When do you think you
Well,
would
this
start?
one we're going to prototype. This one is, Jeff and I are prototyping this top piece of this one this year. So this one's not ready for larger. If you're really interested in it and you want to prototype it, then let me know, and we can figure out a little prototype for you to start it.
So if I'm starting out fresh with someone that is looking toward getting a master's degree certificate, is the leadership series still going to be used for that? Or are we moving beyond that to the Mastering the Scriptures series?
You can.
How do I approach that afresh with somebody today?
You can. Those pathways will still be available. So the answer is in your court, really, what you want to do. It's flexible. We'll still have all those pathways. We're obviously very excited and want to promote the what we call internally. Externally this doesn't really communicate, but 2.7.5 and 3.0 are our newest stuff. And so we're really pushing towards that because they get you theologically, framework-wise, they get you more up the second and the third curve. They even make the first curve clearer, I think. So we would really want you to do that. But there's reasons why you might want to do the 1.0, 1.5, and 2.0 versions. Ultimately, it's up to you.
But ultimately, we want to move the whole thing. We want to move from the leadership series to the Mastering the Scriptures.
Yeah, at some point. At some point, we will probably. Jeff has said they're crutches, and I don't know the time frame might be, but we'll probably phase out the leadership series courses at some point.
Yeah. I'm the one actually promoting it the most, and
Jeff
I'm the one
is-
that wrote the things.
Yeah, Jeff
So imagine spending 32 years writing them and saying, okay, get them out of the way so we can do our next phase.
Yeah,
in it.
all that work but all that work led us to where we are now. I mean, so it's not a waste, but a follow-up question here, Zach. Yeah.
Just a comment. I mean, the readers in all those courses are like a gold mine. What you've culled out from all the resources to get down to what's in that 3-ring notebook is
Yeah.
just gold.
Yeah, you're right. And there's so much, I mean, from an emotional side of things, there's a lot of us in this room that have a lot of emotional memories tied to notable events that happened in our lives when light bulbs went on. Oh, this is the church. Oh, my goodness. Paul was not a parachurch organization? Oh, my goodness. So there's a piece of us from an emotional side. It's like, what are you talking about, Jeff?
Yeah, I'm
We're not
saying
going to bury those things. Those things are gold. But
the reality is the readers were gold in their day, from my perspective, because many of the things are actually transitioning from the old paradigm, and people that are breaking through that now, when you look at what's available, because of the paradigm papers and the encyclicals, you don't lose those main pieces, that would be in there. But when you get into the Greco-Roman research, see, the strength of them is, yes, they do create a certain dialogue, but it's like something that is, you can easily go off into some really wrong direction.
maybe Paul was a
with them
parachurch
too.
organization.
But if they're in a skilled hand and they're available, and actually I even talked with Steve about the fact that if we ever get to the point where we want to credit it as a hard doctorate, he doesn't like when I say soft and hard, but as a ED, a THD, or a PhD. The 7 core courses on the education thing are research pieces, and Series 2 related to a THD. So actually, they could also become resource tools, to open the door to a more of an academic, approach. But I really think I'm just such a believer in what I'm seeing happening with this, and you actually spend more time and then once you learn the access to what's available, it dwarfs. I mean, literally tens of thousands of resources that come right down on the passages out of Greco-Roman is out there. And you can't, and so to update those things into this is, and you can't scale it. I mean, the way publishing is and it's just,
Don, I'm speaking out of my
I'm
own
selling against my own
Yeah, I know
stuff,
you are.
but
I'm speaking out of my own experience, my own experience of the leadership series courses. But I can also tell you my experience in the last 10 years with mastering the scriptures. It just opens up a whole nother level of understanding. So, especially Paul's traditioning process and second and third curve stuff just is crystal clear about what Paul was doing and how he left the schema for us. So we don't want anybody to miss that. Good questions. Who else? Other questions? Yeah? Oh. Having their own discussion.
And by the way, if you want 2 expert opinions, if you want to follow the idea we still need the leadership series and the unique things that they'll do, talk to Steve Kemp. If you want to replace the leadership series with Mastering the Scriptures, talk to Bill Burns. It's a good assessment, isn't it?
$11:02. All right. We're going to gain an extra 57 minutes. All right. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to pray and be done. But before we do that, tonight, I looked it up because we're going to have a banquet feast, and what I was planning to say was dress to the nines. Now, for most of you, it's too late because you traveled here, but what in the world does that mean? So I looked it up, and it's a Scottish phrase from the 17th century where 9 simply just means banquet and celebration. So It's not really helpful. I didn't find it that helpful, but I guess that's where a phrase could. Does anyone else have is that where it comes from? Can anybody does anybody have big Scottish roots in here? Okay, I'm glad I brought this up. This is complete a waste of time. We're going to celebrate tonight. Some great food. And we're going to talk about what does it mean to root the way of Christ and his apostles. It's not going to be heavy hitting. You're going to hear from probably 7 of our leaders and children and people from our own network about what it has meant to be rooted in the way of Christ and his apostles. You'll hear from our senior elders. You're going to hear from a young man who's 6, maybe. You're going to hear from a young man who's 18. You're going to hear from a young woman. You're going to hear from a lot of people tonight. And my dad's coming with my mommy, so that'll be fun too. All right, so tonight we'll see you. What time does this thing start tonight? 5:30. All right, starts at 5:30, so we must be getting older. We're going to start early and end early, so we can go to bed early, evidently. Jeez, who set that up? All right, 5:30. We got an elder in here. Jay, why don't you come up here and pray for us? We will spend the afternoon dialoguing and resting.
Thank you, Michael. Let's wrap up the sessions with a heart of prayer together. Father, as we conclude the time of this year's summit and the focus of moving up the curves, I just want to translate that into the work that you have put in front of us, that you've opened doors, you've provided apostolic leaders, you've given them fields, and they have the opportunity, the tools, all in front of them. So I pray for their hearts, that they would embrace your plan, Paul's order for the churches, and that we would be faithful, but also that we would work ourselves to death, to never end, just continue up the curves to establish your church as your plan, in order to demonstrate to the world in heavenly places your wisdom. And as all of us return back to our homes and to our churches, just keep the fire burning, the flame of intelligence, working to become one with the teaching and develop the mind of Christ, the full and deep knowledge of the Scriptures, and be able to use them to establish, shepherd, and counsel all those that are under our charge. And so thank you that you brought us together, and we entrust the future to you, and just ask that the Spirit continue to move amongst us and keep all our lampstands lit. And we pray this in your Son's name. Amen.